Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. On this week's show, we're going to be talking about I know why you did that. That may sound like a little bit of a ominous or accusatory title for this week, but actually it's a phrase that I've been using to help myself self-soothe. And we're going to get into all that this week and what self-soothing means and how using that phrase, I know why you did that, has been really helpful in my journey of self-soothing. But before we get to that, just a couple of reminders. If you're new to the show, welcome. I'm so glad you're listening this week. And if you've been around for a while, thanks for coming back. I really do appreciate all of you listening, all of your feedback, and really just what you're doing for yourself here every week when you show up to listen to the show, to get new ideas, to get new ways of looking at things. And as I've always said on the show, take what works for you and leave the rest. And I think that's really important right now it's always been important, but especially now as we just navigate these really odd times. So thank you all for being here and for listening. And a new episode of the show goes live every Monday on Web Talk Radio. I also post my shows to my Gab TV channel. I'll have the links to all that in the show notes for you. And one last thing before we move on to this week's episode. If you like what you hear in the show, one way you can support the show is by purchasing my course, 33 Days of Magic. This is where you can take what you learn in the show and apply it in your own life. It's a 33-day program. I give you a daily exercise you can do that takes no more than 5 to 10 minutes, whatever works for your schedule. But you can really start to make small changes both mentally and what you do in your daily life. And I think you'll be surprised at how quickly things can change for you when you start to implement a program like this. So if you'd like to learn more, 33daysofmagic.com. All right, so this week, talking about I know why you did that. To me, the ability to self-soothe is one of the greatest skills anyone can learn as a human being. Self-soothing is it's a way to self-regulate. It's a way to regulate your emotions. It's a tool you can use to talk to yourself in times of anxiety or fear or when you're in otherwise uncomfortable situations, that it allows you to talk to yourself in a way that's comforting, that disarms you, that can calm you, that can help you get through a moment in time that maybe you feel like you're never going to get through. And it helps you to, at least for me, it's self-soothing allows me to take a minute and go within instead of experience a knee-jerk reaction where I might lash out to someone and regret it later. In doing this self-soothing, it's like we're going within in the moment to figure out what's really going on with us, right? Like what's a question I'll ask myself when I feel triggered in something and I feel like I can feel myself getting out of control. Something I'll ask myself is, okay, what's really going on here, right? What do I really need in this moment? What is this moment telling me? What's the feeling that's coming up that's uncomfortable that maybe I'm trying to escape from? And it's in addressing those inner needs that we have that we may have overlooked for some period of time or we may not want to face. That's something that I've realized lately on some of the things I've been working through is I just didn't want to face them. But when we address those, when we recognize the moment, when we talk to ourselves in that moment, it helps to lessen the sharpness of the trigger in the first place. And hopefully over time, even diminish the trigger as even being a trigger, right? It helps to clear out that whatever is going on in that situation. And with self-soothing, there's no perfect way to do this, right? There's no perfect way to experience a trigger. And, it's not it would be easy if it was just a 3-point system, do this, do that, and the other, right? But that's not really how it works when it comes to self-soothing, because it's a lot of times the level of emotion that's involved, it takes over. We logically would want to do those things, but the emotions often run the show in the triggered moments. So getting in the habit of going within first to address whatever the feelings are that you're experiencing, and actually loving yourself through that, right? Taking the time to ask yourself what you need, what's going on here, and actually listening in those moments, in those triggered moments. It can help to start to shift behaviors. It can help to shift, really shift into this default state of, okay, I'm going to take a minute and figure out what's going on with me, and really loving ourselves rather than projecting what's going on inside of us onto someone else or a situation or whatever's happening in that moment. Because I think often we do that. We go outside of ourselves. We we put it on somebody else. Well, if they wouldn't have done that, right? If he wouldn't have done that or she wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have to feel this way. But that's not how it works, right? We can't go around controlling what everybody does in the world. And so instead of going outside of ourselves to find relief, we're able to come inside and figure out what's going on with us and manage our own behavior, so it's not something that we don't end up doing something that we regret later. So this phrase, I know why you did that, it's been one of the greatest reminders for me to help soothe and regulate myself when I've wanted to spin out of control. And often what happens to me is there'll be a situation, and I'll give you an example. So I think I talked about this a couple episodes ago about how, so where I live, they're building houses behind my house. And one morning it had just rained and they hadn't put the sod down in the new houses back there. So it was really muddy. And this guy was back there and he got stuck. He was stuck for like 30 minutes and he was really like revving up his vehicle, right? And he was like really going at it. And one of the guys came out and helped him get out. But as he backed out, he hit my fence and he busted out the bottom boards on it. And he drove off. And I'm like, my neighbor next to me saw, the other neighbor that helped him get out saw, and another fourth neighbor saw. And I'm like, how can you just hit this fence and drive off? Like, it's no big deal, right? Like, we saw you do this, right? And so I'm in this moment and I'm so pissed off because I'm like, okay, so somebody can just hit something, damage property and drive off, and nobody's like, to me, it felt like this moment of like, nobody can see me. Nobody's paying attention to me. Somebody's did this to my property and is not taking responsibility for it and just driving off. Right. And I was pissed and I was upset, and I was more pissed because the dog kept trying to get through that space in the fence and, blah, 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 all this stuff. And so then later that afternoon, another group of people came to do something on that same house. And I thought it was the same guy that hit my fence. And I went over there and I was like, you guys, you keep hitting this fence. And because it was the third time actually this happened, I just happened to see the person do it. But I'm kind of going off on these guys because I'm pissed, and I thought they were of the same group of the first person that hit it. And it turns out that they weren't. They didn't have any idea what I was talking about. They were like, okay, sorry, but we didn't do it. And then I've, this wave of like shame and like regret washes over me because I'm like, damn it, why did I go do this? Why didn't I, take a minute? Why did I, and why, and the self-punishment comes in, and I'm beating myself up over this. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know why you did that. Like, this is what I'm saying in my mind, right? I know why you did that. I know why you went over there, because you thought it was the same guy. The vehicle looked similar. The guy had the same color shirt on, right? It looked like the same guy from my viewpoint, right? Now, it turns out later I was wrong, but I went over there. In my mind, I know why I did this. I had things to back up my decision, right? There were things that I saw in that moment that led me to going over there and talking to these guys about this. Now, again, I wasn't correct, but I still, it wasn't like I just went over there and unloaded on them because they were the next people that showed up, right? It wasn't anything like that. I actually thought it was the same person. So it wasn't. But this phrase of, I know why you did that. Like, I know why I made those decisions. I know why. And with anything in life, right? Anything that we do, we make decisions based on why we make decisions based on thoughts that are going on that, for the most part, right, that lead us to the action, right? In the majority of, now there are, of course, some people who just fly off and do random things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you make a logical, what you felt like was a rational decision, and come to find out later you made a mistake, or you misjudged, or you whatever, you were wrong, and you want to start that process of self-punishment, right? Using this phrase, wait a minute, I know why you did that, and it is a great way to start the self-soothing process. So when we experience something like that, where we did something and we know why we did it, but come to find out later we were wrong, and that's part of life too, right? We're not always right. We really have two choices in this, right? When we start to feel that guilt and shame that's associated with acting a certain way, like I felt for going over there and saying something to these guys, there's two paths. There's the forgiveness for ourselves, the compassion for ourselves, the self-soothing, the starting of that self-soothing process. Like, wait a minute, I know why you did that. You did that because of X, Y, and Z. You had things to back up your decision in that moment. So we can do that. We can take that path of forgiveness and compassion. Or we can just let the inner punisher run wild in our mind and beat us up and feel guilty and have that sick feeling in our stomach and feel like we need to go over there and try to make it right again. And then sometimes when we do those kinds of things, we make it worse, right? It didn't even end up being, it's like, fuck, I just completely fucked this up even worse the second time than if I would have just, stayed quiet about it. But that's all part of the process of learning, of living, of being a human being, right? We have these experiences. We can sit here and talk about these things in these, these contained environments, when we're alone, when we're, as I'm talking to you on this podcast, and we can do that. But the only way these things that we learn, the only way we get to work through them, or we get to try them, or we get to experience living, is to go out in the world and live, right? We don't stay in our space just by ourselves and say, okay, got that one, check mark, check mark, move on to the next one, right? No, we actually go live and experience and figure out how to navigate all this. And so this choosing the path of self-soothing and choosing statements like, wait a minute, nope, I know why I did that. I know why I did that, right? It helps us in that triggered moment to slow down for a minute, take a breath with the situation, right? And it helps us to self-regulate, even like taking a minute and like closing your eyes, or, going within, like actually putting your hands on your heart, or like, holding putting your arms across your chest, whatever it takes for you to get in your body in that moment and bring it back inside to you. Even if it's just a couple of minutes, it allows you to take responsibility for yourself and for caring for yourself in that triggered moment. Because that's really what I'm learning, is that's really, our bodies are our home. And often the home that we create in our body is not a welcoming space. And this is due to many things that we've experienced over the years, right? There's whatever anybody has been through. That self-talk, that self-regulation, when we don't have that, when we're not able to do that, when we're not able to protect ourselves in that way, we're not setting up our home, our body, what's internally going on inside of us, that internal chatter. We're not setting it up as a place we want to be, right? So we're always going outside of ourselves to try to find that relief, because we can't find the relief within it. So I can find the relief maybe in a relationship, or in a friendship, or in a job, or in a, various habits, right? We go outside of ourselves for all that, because home, inside of us isn't a safe place to be. And learning how to, in these triggered moments, how to self-soothe, how to self-regulate, learning that we can take care of ourselves, right? I can take care of me. I can stand up against that inner punisher that wants to run the show for me. I don't have to let that be how my home is, right? In my body. It doesn't have to be that way. I can take care of me. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal to be able to do that. And I think this is how you train your mind into believing in yourself, right? This self-soothing, this shift from the inner punisher running the show into, wait a minute, no, I've got me. I can take care of me. This is how we train ourselves into believing in ourselves. And this is how the self-soothing starts to be what runs the show instead of that inner punisher. So, as I said earlier, there's no perfect way to be with a trigger. There's no perfect way to, if this could be an easy 5-point, 3-point process where it was just boom, 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 right? It wouldn't even be an issue to discuss. But that's just not the way it works for most of us. It's a practice. It's something when we have these triggered moments, we have to get into the practice of not judging ourselves, right, like with the fence, right, when me going out and talking to those other guys, like, okay, I made a mistake. I can give myself that grace or that space to be a human. I'm not always perfect, and I can be a human, and I don't have to judge myself in this situation. I can accept where I am with whatever those feelings are, because we get to feel all our feelings, right? The self-soothing doesn't mean that we're only talking, we're only accepting positive feelings in that moment. No, self-soothing is really getting in and asking yourself, what's really going on here? And being able to scream those emotions out in your mind, or even actually screaming them out. Like, here's really the deal with me right now. Here's really what's happening. That's okay. That is encouraged, right? You should feel all of your emotions. The place where I think we get tripped up sometimes is when we explode those emotions on other people, and we take it out on them, or we push it on them, when, if we would have taken that time to self-regulate and self-soothe, we could really get to the bottom of what's going on and work through it from that lens rather than from the emotional lens of letting the emotions just go crazy. So in a triggered moment, being able to, like I said, not judge yourself and accept where you are, and just let yourself feel the feelings, right? Let yourself, that may mean you have to step away from whatever the situation is for a few minutes. And it may mean that you have to come back later, or, the next day, or whatever. And, sometimes that's not possible, but it's figuring out how to manage yourself in that moment. And when you feel your feelings, when you're focused on yourself and what's really going on inside me, what are my feelings, and not trying to fix the other person or the situation, we start to understand and build and accept this compassion for ourselves, right? We that's often something many of us don't have, is self-compassion. So being able to do that when you're feeling your feelings can help you to have that compassion for yourself that's so necessary, but also being able to then, when someone else is triggered by you, maybe you do something that triggers someone that you didn't even mean to, right? But they're triggered, and it helps us to start to look at others with more compassion and see that it's really easy to feel separate from each other and to feel like we're the only one going through it, or we're the only one having this problem or this issue. But that is not true. That is not reality. Everybody is going through something in some way similarly. And everybody pretty much wants the same things, right? Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be understood, right? All of these kinds of things are a common thread of being a human. So this compassion, this inner compassion, when we can see ourselves compassionately, it helps us look at others with that same compassion. And so the next time that something happens that triggers you, maybe you'll decide that you want to try something new. So taking a minute to, okay, this is really uncomfortable. I'm feeling, mad, angry, upset, scared, whatever it is. Taking a moment, and if the phrase, I know why you did that, right? If you're in a situation where you're feeling regret or shame for something that you did, and you're trying to work through it, giving yourself that compassion to say, wait a minute, I know why you did these things. You made this decision because of this, that, or the other, whatever it is. And helping your self-talk, and learning how to come at, so that the goal is not to stop the trigger from happening, right? There's no way we could ever do that. That's not the way this works. We can't go out there telling everybody, don't do this, no, that is absolutely never going to happen. But the goal is when we are triggered, is to be able to go within and address our own needs by soothing ourselves so that we can respond to that situation in a new way, right? We can respond from a place of curiosity with things rather than judgment, right? We can be mindful. We can move through situations, and in doing this with these new, approaching it with this new way of more of a self-soothing and giving ourselves that compassion, we create new pathways in our brain for that behavior to become permanent, right? It's a little uncomfortable, a lot uncomfortable at first, but after you do it a couple of times, then it's like you have the proof that you can do it again and again and again, right? It becomes easier to do. And we can stop ourselves when we're in these situations and be like, wait a minute, that's not where I want to go. I know this old way. I know I used to react this way, but that's not the way I want to go. I want to do this differently. And I can continue to explore this from a place of curiosity, and I can continue to clear this out and operate from this calmness and this, instead of, getting spun up or wound up or, whatever in these terrible feelings, and then the domino effect that comes after that with guilt and shame or, whatever those emotions are for you. It's a new operating system. It's a new way to operate. It's a new way to explore your situations, your world, your relationships, whatever that is for you. And that's something that I found really helpful this week, was being able to when I do have a situation where I'm finding myself running wild with my thoughts, using that phrase, wait a minute, I know why you did that. That has been a great first step in self-soothing. So I hope it helps you this week as well. All right, so that's it for this week on our topic of I know why you did that. I would love to hear your thoughts. Also, I'd love to connect with you on social media. I'm on Gab TV. I did recently sign up for a Minds account. I'm actually really liking that one. I know I talk about a lot of different social media on here every week, but honestly, I'm feeling like I'm having a hard time finding a home base for social media. I'm trying different things. I'm exploring. I'm exploring with curiosity and adventure rather than judgment. And so right now, I like Minds. So if you're on Minds, the link will be in the show notes, and we can connect there. Also, I have my Telegram channel still. You can, we can interact there. There's comments on there that you can use, and I would really love to hear from you. So I think that's all I had for you this week. Until next week, remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.